Thanks for getting on to the Wednesday edition of Vogan's European Outlook. It's hard to believe we've reached the end of week 1 of December. Incredible stuff. And this is the 2 meter temperature. Normally is so far for the opening 7 days of the month. Very warm compared to normal across Greenland and across Alaska and across the top of Eurasia, all associated with strong blocking high pressure. That, of course, is keeping the Arctic Oscillation well below the neutral line, and it looks as if that's going to continue now for the next several days here, at least a week, where we are guaranteed to have the Arctic Oscillation firmly negative. The Arctic North Atlantic Oscillation, by the way, not just quite as straightforward. We are seeing some changes. The modelling is all over the place, and we'll look at that in just a second, but you can see here the North Atlantic Oscillation not quite as negative. Notice it reached a kind of low point. It's kind of came back up once again, and then it's set to go back in the deeper negative once again. And notice here, by the time we head towards the 20th of the month, the modelling indicates that it's going back towards neutral once again. But of course, the Arctic is penetrating right the way down across the British Isles at the moment. Here we've seen a couple of Arctic fronts moving south, and that is enhancing the rain, sleet, and snow shower activity across, particularly the north, where we're seeing the potential for accumulating snow to sea level and a significant amount up over higher ground, especially 200 meters and above. But there is a lot of shower activity, as you can see here, an exposure of that north wind down the east coast, down the Irish Sea as well. But of course, the bulk of England and Wales void of those convective snow showers, because basically the air is so dry coming out of the north. The reason why we're seeing these convective showers is that the very cool winds blowing across relatively warm sea surface waters, and of course that is allowing the convection to develop. So you can see that quite clearly here. But the month of December so far is looking like this across Europe. Now starting to edge more and more below normal. Scotland still slightly above average, if you notice here, across some spots. But when you're talking about temperatures, daytime temperatures barely above the freezing mark, we are going to start to see that average going more, kind of turning more blue in the chart, so to speak. Very, very cold compared to normal, as you can see here across Russia. But it's going to be an interesting next week to 2 week period here. This is the Canadian model actually for the upcoming 7 day period here. Let's go back to the current chart, show you the upcoming 7 days. And it is very, very firmly below normal, as you can see here. The bulk of the chill, if you notice here, is down across the south of the British Isles and Ireland here, across France. And we've got some very cold conditions compared to normal across Scandinavia as well. But as we go, as we skip through the sequence here of the model, you can see here that the cold continues to hold. It might even intensify over Central Europe, as you can see here, as we push towards the period 12th through the 19th of December. The cold maintains itself, but becomes stronger, if you notice on the Canadian model. Germany, Poland, into central portions of Europe, it looks as if the cold is going to intensify in the period between the 15th and the 22nd of December. The UK is still firmly below normal, if you notice here, for the period, and that is quite interesting to see. This is the ECMWF for the upcoming 7 day period here, and of course, basically mirroring all the other models here, firmly below normal for the foreseeable future. In fact, and you can see here even the 7 to the 14 day period. So this is of course week 2, and that takes us out to the 19th of December, still well below normal temperature wise here. And then as we push towards the Christmas period, below normal, but less so, if you notice here, and that even takes us right to the end of the month here. But the modelling is back and forth, folks, here. GFS, ECMWF, the Met Office, all these model runs are indicating that we are going to continue to see blocking high pressure up towards Greenland here. We're going to continue to see northerly winds coming down over the next couple of days, and then things become a little bit more settled. While we may not have the coldest air compared to normal towards the weekend. As the winds fall lighter, what we're going to start to see is the air mass aloft actually is a little bit less cold, but in fact, it's going to be the opposite effect down at the surface. We're going to see daytime temperatures becoming colder and colder and colder, and really anywhere across the British Isles, whether it be from Glasgow, Inverness, all the way down to Brighton on the south coast, daytime temperatures are going to struggle to get much above the freezing mark. So this will be a reasonably noteworthy December cold spell. Not extreme, nothing completely out of the ordinary. We see these kind of cold spells every 2 to 3 years, really. But what we are going to see is days becoming colder, nights becoming colder as well. And of course, with these snow showers running from north to south, if you get where you do get the clear skies and light winds, especially with the conditions over the weekend, higher pressure starting to develop, we'll lose the wind, we'll lose the cloud cover across the north. You're going to see temperatures falling away very sharply indeed, widely, even in towns and cities where the skies are clear and the winds are light, -6, -7, quite possible. Where there's snow on the ground and away from urban areas, we could be talking about -9 to -12 Celsius, I think, over the course of this weekend coming up. So certainly nothing to sniff at. But notice here, this is off the overview chart here. This is the GFS. We've still got these northerly winds. We've got little features developing on that northerly flow, and we need to keep an eye on that, because what these little features, these little miniature areas of low pressure that develop, almost enhance precipitation and also enhance the potential for snowfall. We've got a feature that runs down through the North Sea, Irish Sea, and that may pep up the snow chances across western portions of England, parts of Wales in the next couple of days here. But notice here that we continue to see these snow showers across Caithness, Sutherland, Aberdeenshire, Moray, Inverness-shire, and of course, as that moisture heads further south over land, the dryness of the air just basically sucks out any kind of moisture, and you're left with clear skies, down towards the central belt here. This area of low pressure to the south, we're going to have to keep an eye on that as we go into the early portion of next week here. But the models are very much back and forward. We'll also have the prospect of a fairly significant snowstorm over Central Europe, I think, into early next week, and we'll need to keep an eye on that. But the latest run of the GFS is quite interesting, by the way, because you notice here that as we press through the remainder of this week, continue to have these northerly winds coming down. Of course, the winds are less strong the further south over the British Isles you get, always strongest on that north coast, and then exposure of wind blowing off that water. You've got less frictional effect. Once it reaches land, once it hits the hills, you're slowing down that airflow, so to speak, here. But then as we go from Friday into Saturday, we have got an area of low pressure on the north coast of Scotland. Then we've got the feature that kind of jumps down into the Irish Sea that may pep up the snow potential across parts of England, Wales, even parts of Ireland, believe it or not, may start to see snowfall breaking out with this feature. All the while, however, we're spacing out the isobars, and therefore we increase the temperatures of cold, by day, and particularly so by night time. We could see some very, very cold temperatures indeed. Now, as I play through this loop, this is leaving from the weekend into the early portion of next week. We find ourselves in a no man's land. You notice that here we've got this big area of low pressure at 959 millibars over the central North Atlantic. We've got a big strong area of high pressure extending from basically Canada across Greenland into Scandinavia. Notice that the pattern is now starting to change to somewhat more easterly once again. So instead of having the northerly feed of air, we're then starting to see the winds coming in more from an easterly direction. And that could get quite interesting because Europe is starting to turn colder and colder, especially with the prospects of a major snow event across Poland, Germany, into southern portions of Scandinavia as well. You're starting to transport even colder air from Russia into that region here. We're talking about some major cold actually starting to develop over the heart of Europe. And if you start to see that Scandinavian high developing and becoming stronger, look out. We could start to see the possibilities, at least very slight possibilities, of, dare I say, a beast from the east. But again, this is basically what I'm seeing, what I think may come like happen, but I'm not saying for sure that this is definitely going to happen. I try my very best to avoid hyping things up here, folks, but certainly it is very interesting what we're seeing. There's that big major snowstorm that I'm talking about. Germany, Poland, southern portions of Sweden, for example, here, we could see a major snow event taking place. All the while, you notice here we've got an area of high pressure over the British Isles, keeping things cold, locked in place. Area of low pressure to the west, starting to edge closer and closer. Of course, as that moisture bumps into the colder over the British Isles, we could see snow breaking out, for example. But this is certainly a very interesting pattern taking place during the course of next week. A way out, of course, these models are going to go all over the place when it comes to snow potential and whatnot. But look at this here. Next Friday, I know it's a long way out here, but the potential is on the table here. Strengthening area of high pressure over Scandinavia here was have a much colder Europe and winds coming in from the easterly direction here. And of course, with a much colder air mass to the east, those easterly winds would bring heavy snowfall to the eastern side of the British Isles here. Something similar to what we've seen back in February of 2021. If we look at the 850 temperature chart here, you can see what we're talking about here. Some very, very cold air now starting to show up over the centre of Europe, of course. And if you get those winds coming into the British Isles, that would be a proper easterly wind as opposed to, something a lot milder than, when we started the cold process off, we had easterly winds. It felt cold, but it wasn't anything to write home about. This certainly would have the potential to be something a lot more impressive when it comes to wintry conditions. But it's a long way off, and some of the model runs. This is a more a colder outlook. Some of the model runs indicate that system to the southwest of the UK actually pulls up very mild conditions once again. May break out heavy snowfall across parts of England and Wales, but then eventually the milder would potentially win out actually. But like I say, once these cold patterns start to develop and then kind of really lock in place, once you start to pile in the cold air, it can be very hard to shift that. And certainly based on the deep negative of the Arctic Oscillation and North Atlantic Oscillation, this cold spell, folks, I would be very surprised if it just ended like that there. I think it's going to be a longer process overall based on everything that I'm seeing at the moment. But certainly a lot of interesting things to come, that's for sure. So certainly I do encourage you to keep it right here on my channel, and we'll watch this space as it evolves. Looking at the latest snow depth chart of the GFS, and you can see here we start to see the snow cover increasing, and therefore that is going to help the temperatures by day and night coming down more and more. Struggling to get above freezing, especially where there's snow on the ground. You'll probably find that there's sub-freezing days actually, and then of course on the clear skies and light winds, particularly this weekend. I think the environment is primed for double digits below freezing. But you notice here that the model is stiffening out that little feature coming south, seeing snowfall across parts of the Cumbria region, down through like kind of Blackpool, Morecambe, into the Liverpool area, down the western side of Wales, even the southwest of England. You can see here that I think that the models are sniffing out that feature that heads south and kind of semi-develops here. You play through the loop here. This is the snow cover chart by the time we reach the end of the upcoming weekend. So where there's snow on the ground, temperatures probably sub-freezing by day, double digits possible by night. But even away from snow-covered ground, by the way, temperatures are going to come down well into the -4 to -8 range, I think. So the cold is now starting to lock in, and it may take quite some time before it disappears once again. So you can see that here. You can see the snow increasing here over Germany and into the Low Countries as well here.